Today I'm reviewing the NF Acous NA20 single dynamic driver IEMs and getting triggered. Let's get it. What's cracking, audio fans? It's David here from Prime Audio Reviews, and I'm going to do the cable first today because I hate this cable so much, because you can already see why. Look at those ear hooks. They are ridiculous. If you watch my videos regularly, you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I cannot stand really aggressive and stiff ear hooks like this because they just affect the stability of the fit. With this one, I either have to use extra large ear tips or a third-party cable, but because for some crazy reason NF Acous has decided to use QDC connectors or 0.75mm connectors, so none of my third-party cables fit. They are too thick or too wide to fit in these sockets, so that's just unreal. Please do not make IEMs so hard for me to use. But enough with that. Look at these IEMs. These are quite pretty, and they probably look very familiar if you've seen NF Acous or NF Audio IEMs before, because they have a similar shape, similar shell size and everything. But these have got this lovely caramel color and they look quite nice. By the way, the price is $129 US, and the actual shells themselves are super comfortable, but once that cable comes into play, but I promise I will not mention that again. I'm going to get right into the sound. So the NF Acous NA20, it has what I would call a V-shaped sound signature. It is a kind of a warm sounding IEM. It's pretty easy going. It doesn't have any sharpness or harshness. So I'm going to throw up the graph right there, and you can see, well, this one more than others, you can definitely vividly see that V there. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually, in this case, it's quite good because these sound pretty great. But let's go a bit deeper. So the bass is boosted. There is a bit of an emphasis on the mid-bass punch with this one, although there is still ample rumble on call when you need it, so sub-bass is there in abundance when it's necessary. But kick drums have got this nice solid impact and a slightly blunted attack, so slightly rounded attack, the initial hit of like kick drums. That sounds nice and natural, and it gives a sense of impact. And then you've got a nice speedy and controlled decay. So slightly forward bass, but a mid-bass focus with a really nice natural sound and good control. And I really enjoy this kind of upper bass enhanced sound. Like, it makes bass guitars really come to life. It sort of triggers an emotional response in me, this kind of tuning. It feels, music just feels sort of groovy and very rhythmic and very engaging. But moving on to the mid-range, and that is probably the one con I will say, is that the lower mid-range is a bit recessed. So while there is good clarity and detail in the lower mids, things like male vocals and like acoustic guitars sound slightly thin. Not really thin, just sort of pulled back in the mix a bit. They're lacking a bit of power, if you will. But apart from that, it's a lovely mid-range. The timbre is on point. I probably should have said that NF Acous doesn't label themselves as a Chi-Fi IEM brand. They consider themselves a professional audio brand. And they sort of, I believe, if I remember correctly, they started out as sort of producing stage or live stage monitors for musicians. And that's still somewhat a bit of a focus, but they're also obviously targeting audiophiles as well. So yeah, the lower mids are a bit recessed. The upper mids are fine. There's plenty of lift in the presence region, sort of that 2 to 4 kilohertz area is lifted and boosted, so female vocals and most mid-range instruments sound nice and upfront. There's great clarity there, good detail, nice nuance, all those good keywords that we love to talk about unless you're not in the IEM world heavily, and you probably don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but I'm doing my best. Now, despite the peak that you see there at 5 kilohertz, there's not jump out, it's not dissonant, it's not sibilant, there's no sharpness and no shoutiness either at all. It's a really nice mid-range, apart from that one slight drawback of just the lower mids being slightly pulled back in the mix. And then for the treble, it's a lovely treble, and I said this in the last NF Acous video. What was that? The NM2 Plus maybe? But these guys do lovely treble tuning, and it's the same again here. So you've got a nice soft treble, but at the same time it is crisp. But what's really impressive about it, considering, remember I said it has a warm sound signature with an emphasized bass, there's still really good detail retrieval. So even micro detail retrievals are quite easy, distinctly audible, but without an ounce of sharpness in the treble whatsoever. It's just really nice. On top of that, it is an airy treble, a spacious treble. So the soundstage on these is quite expansive. You've got a lovely soundstage, and that's one of the advantages of having a V-shaped sound signature. Like if you have really forward mid-range, if you have a really forward mid-range, that tends to sort of minimize the, not minimize, but reduce the size of the soundstage somewhat. With a V-shaped sound signature, you can have your bass and you can have your treble too, and just pulling back the mids a bit sort of gives you this sense of space. But apart from that, good resolution, instrument separation is on point. You've got great precise imaging, so you can hear exactly the position of everything within the mix or the game, whatever you might be doing. And you've got this nice wide sound stage that also has good forward depth. It doesn't sound like a flat two-dimensional plane. It sounds like a natural sort of area or space. I think I've said that word too many times already. But let's do some quick comparisons, and I'm going to start with this one here, which is the Z Reviews X Jazzier Defiant. I think it's around the same price, maybe slightly lower, but the Defiant here, first of all, you'll notice the shells are a bit bigger. That's not really an issue. They are still super comfortable, and as you can see, probably see, they are really pretty. I've got the jade green version, obviously. But let's talk about the sound. So the differences here are the Defiant has a more linear frequency curve. It's not as V-shaped. It's not quite as dynamic. It doesn't have as much of a bass lift, but it does have more forward mids in place of that. So if you really like your vocals and mid-range instruments up front and intimate, the Jazzier is really good for that. And then in the treble, the Defiant is smoother again, which is necessary because it has less bass presence than the NA20. So it's a really great sounding IEM. I don't think I've done it justice with my poor description, but I haven't written one down. I'm just going off my dome at the moment, going off the head. So both of these are really smooth. There is a little bit more life and sparkle in the treble of the NA20 here. The Defiant, however, does have great treble extension, so it still has good details. And remember, it doesn't have a really or as forward bass and lower mid-range, so the treble doesn't have to compete with that to get those details through. So it's still got a pretty good stage, not as wide as the NA20, but pretty good nonetheless. Look, both of these are great IEMs. If I had to choose, I would obviously take the Defiant because it comes with a good cable and a good selection of ear tips, whereas this one, I forgot to mention, only comes with 4 pairs of ear tips and that this awful cable. Now, just let me clarify. The quality of the cable, it's 6N copper, which is actually high quality material. So this part, the bottom or first 3/4 of the cable is lovely. It handles nicely, but just these hooks, it gets tangled every time you blink. you've got tangles in the cable. It's just awful. And then you've got those horrible connectors, which, well, they're not really horrible. They work fine. It's a good system. Like, it's nice and secure and stable and robust. But like I said, yeah, it's not good for cable rolling. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, Path Family Audiophile style. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button before you go. And until next time, I'll see you later.